Thank you for coming. There's a large crowd here. I'm really excited. Thank you for showing up with very little detail in any of the information given, but I'm glad you showed up and came. And we've got some great guests here. I always want to thank Sony because they provide us with a lot of tools for DSD, not only being the ones that actually brought it to the world back in 1981, what they thought was for archiving purposes, but for things like this, which is a little portable recorder. I think it's under $1,000, right? It's like $700. It's been around for a while, and it's very flexible. You can move the positions of the mics. It runs on 4 AA batteries, and you stick a little headphone in there, and there you go. And so what we're going to do today, we're calling Guerrilla recording in DSD. And to show you just how easy this is, we're going to select a member of the audience. Where is that member of the audience we were going to select? Let's have that volunteer. Thank you, thank you. And tell us a little something about yourself.
My name's John. I like whiskey.
That's a good start. So,
Where's your badge?
Oh yeah, I forgot my badge.
you got the badge. Well, where are any of our badges? Well, okay. All right, we'll talk about that later. Okay, and also on our panel today, we have Gus Skinas from Sonoma, and he's got some new products, headphones and headphone amps.
Electrostatics.
Electrostatics.
Yes.
Okay. Up on the 9th floor, room
9030.
9030. And right across the way, we have Acoustic Sounds, where Mark is from. And Mark's demoing some Sony speakers up there and other things on all their other tape projects, which we like. All right. Oh, sorry. And yeah, I also dance. We have guest artists today. Some of you know them from the Newport show and also from the special event, which is a precursor to their final album. I like the music so much with just the basic tracks that were recorded live with Meghan singing and playing the guitar live and Marco playing along with her, that we decided to release it because I couldn't wait until the final was done. But we also have a surprise. In some of the rooms, we're going to be taking around 5 of the mixes that we're playing just to see how they sound on different systems. So over on the left, we have Megan Andrews. And Marco Ferrero on bass. And I also want to mention Valerie Joyce, who came out, and Valerie, will you stand up so they know who you are? There you go. All these artists from Blue Coast have some CDs available that they can sign, or if you'd like to hear them, or even purchase, take later. See the artists after this workshop. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start off with a song called Venus Rising. And we're going to have our special recording engineer. I'm going to show him just how easy this is. It's really one touch. I'm going to admit this. I hadn't tried it till this morning, and it really is one touch. So I'm going to have him put on the headphones. That's probably the left. And then all he has to do is hit record. Yeah. Is it blinking?
No, I'm just saying placement.
Oh, that looks pretty good. Hit record, and then it'll go into a pause, and you'll see it blink. Okay, so when I do this next time, I want you to hit the record button, and we'll be rolling. And stop, yes, at the end, that's good.
It says stop, stay there.
Okay.
Is that a Sony recorder?
Yeah, that's a Sony recorder. We're going to record direct to DSD, DSD 2.8. And I like this for field recording. I'll tell you a little something later what I'm going to do with it. But yeah, so we decided instead of bringing a music stand, we just have John, our audience member, hold it. And I'll just give you a warning, John. So you'll hear them, put it in record pause. Yeah, great. So you'll hear them play, and if you want to make an adjustment either way, you'll hear it. Yeah, this is good. This is good. All right. Are you two ready?
We're ready.
All right, John. I'd like to welcome Meghan and Marco, and they're going to be performing Venus Rising.
Gone, nothing's gone. It's just one thought away. Wrong, nothing's wrong. There's just nothing more to say. Sometimes I just don't know, no, I just don't know if the way that I'm headed is the way I want it, or the way that I'm going is the way I ought to go. You said Vedic scripture should tell me so. And that the stars in the sky realign, and the moon and the sun tend to collide. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, I don't really believe you, but you're kind to try and convince me so. Oh, 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 so kind. Oh, 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 so kind. Time, it's just time, and it marches along. Fine, I feel fine. I feel willful and strong. And sometimes I just don't know, no, I just don't know if the way that I'm headed is the way I want to go, the way that I'm going is the way I ought to go. You say big black book, it tells us so. And then a long time ago, in a far off land, lived a great and superpower with a rib in his hand. And then I came into being because he started deceiving, and now I can't go on, I can't in life. I see only what's surrounding me. Maybe the way of Venus rising equals the way my heart's capsizing. Maybe you say you're high on, but maybe I'm not your the way that I'm headed is the way I wanna go, the way that I'm going is the way I ought to go. You say FedEx scraps, you should tell me so. But no, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, yeah, I don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I just don't know. No, I just don't know, no, I, yeah.
So now this next song is going to take an expert. So I'm going to let John go back to his seat, and I'm going to take over because it's going to be a tough one. I'd like to thank our operator. Thank you, John. And Marco, are you going to play along in this one, or are you going to? Okay. So this one's going to be a solo guitar and voice piece. Marco's just going to sit there because it looks good. So. And here's another surprise. So Gus is
4K video.
he's
4K video and DSD. You gotta experience that.
Wow. I'm watching him do this. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how you do it.
Seminar. That's great. All right, so I'm going to put my engineer hat on. And this is a song called New York City.
Getting used to the mountains.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you too. So if you want to, get to the back, should hear fine. We'll get started. On a little power off. And we're good.
So are we gonna be able to listen to those in some way?
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to figure out how to play these back. Today was how to record, tomorrow was play back. Maybe even later this afternoon. Yeah, that's the idea. Okay, great.
You can edit on my Sonoma.
Really, upstairs? That's right. Okay, room 9290.
9030.
9030. Okay. So how many of you are currently DSD listeners? Oh, all right. Got, looks like most of the room.
It's the best.
Well, we like to think so. And how, let's see, what's another good question? How many of you still listen to PCM? Okay. And how many of you, if music is maybe recorded in 9624 in PCM, if it's available in DSD, would buy a DSD file? Fascinating. Great, okay. So we're here to talk about the future of DSD and what some little insights we've learned over the years, and what we think is coming up. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark right now, so he can give you a little bit of insight, some data he's collected from Acoustic Sounds and their sales of downloads.
Sure. So I'm Mark Shaforjan. I'm here from Acoustic Sounds, and many of you know that we have a high-res download service, Acoustic Sounds Super High Res, and we started that just a few years ago, and we're now up to some 10,000 download products. And we are, generally speaking, format agnostic. I mean, we look at it as our job to provide for our customer what they're asking for, what they want. That said, when we're asked for a recommendation as to what sounds the best, we typically recommend DSD, all things being equal. And DSD customers remain kind of our core support. We have, of our digital download inventory of some 10,000, less than 10% of that is DSD. And yet still 40% or just over 40% of our sales revenue comes from DSD downloads. So clearly we have a very strong kind of core customer that prefers DSD. That's pretty evident. In the last 30 days, I was just looking at the last 30 days of sales, 9 of our 10 best sellers are DSD, and 14 of our top 20 sellers are DSD, 32 of our top 50 sellers are DSD. You know, it's alive and healthy from our perspective, despite a lack of content, relatively speaking. We're adding between 150 and 200 DSD files, titles to the site yearly. So that's obviously being eclipsed by the 24-bit file growth pretty significantly.
That's great. Gus,
Yes.
you've been, have had the most experience of all of us on this panel. You want to give us a little bit of history of how you were involved with DSD and also what you think is coming up?
Okay. Well, I started out with Sony when they were launching the Super Audio CD with David Kawakami, and well, back in those days, we knew that the format had incredible potential. The DSD, it was very, very close to analog, and at the time there was really nothing that you could use to produce the music. So we kind of, had to get scrambling and make something. So we came up with a kind of skunkworks project in the Bay Area. It was a Sonoma project, and we made the first workstation that could record and edit and even signal process DSD audio. and that Sonoma was used probably on the large majority of the early SACDs. And from that point on, Sony cut our project, and I kept the Sonoma up. So to this day, we're still going out recording new artists with it. We're using it for transfers from analog tape to DSD, and I don't know what's coming in the future.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now with Sonoma.
Oh, well, we now have a new product. It's a new company, actually, Sonoma Acoustics, and we are making electrostatic headphones that are, we got the team back together, and the electrostatic headphones are designed by the guy who designed the original speakers that we're using in our studio, Dan and Agnes. And they take in DSD, they take in analog, they're wonderful.
I'm interested about in the 4K video with DSD recording.
Oh.
What software is involved? Or is it an app?
The first 4K video I did with DSD was kind of an accident. I met this this band in a bar, Elephant Revival, and we invited them over to our studio. We recorded them with a kind of surround tree mic. It's called an Atmos. And basically it was 5 microphones. It's picking up the sound from each microphone's perspective in the room. There's no console. It's basically, in the end result, microphone to speaker. We did it DSD. And the day we were doing our first recording, I had gotten a new camera. And I just thought, oh, I'll try, hell with it, I'll try shooting video. So I was shooting video while they were rehearsing and while they were performing, and I had enough video to actually put something together. So I think the very first 4K video with DSD was this surround recording we did shooting Elephant Revival. And it's never been released, but it led to a lot of things happening later on with 4K video and DSD. And when you experience picture with DSD, it's groundbreaking. It really is a completely new experience. It's very realistic. The sound is believable. It just reinforces the picture content that much more.
So I'm curious, because I haven't seen this on an iPhone.
We have to edit it and put it together.
Well, but you just use the video. You have 4K.
This shoots 4K video. Yeah.
Shoots
it's
4K.
Actually quite amazing, the stabilization and everything.
How are you recording in DSD?
You just point and push the button.
I know.
No, you're recording the DSD.
Oh, I see.
We got to put it together.
Oh, we have to put it
afterwards.
together.
You're the
Okay.
one.
I was confused. Sorry. I get
See,
it.
that's the DSD.
Oh, that's the
That's the
DSD.
DSD.
Okay,
That's the
see,
4K.
there's 2 parts to this puzzle. You got to bring the. Okay, I get it now.
I didn't.
I was amazed. I was thinking, whoa, there was. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna rehearse this again. This is you guys are just a warm-up group. Come tomorrow. No. Yeah. Has anybody heard about? Well, I'll put it this way. A lot of people ask, when I'm streaming your previews on your website, is that DSD? And it's not. No, actually, what we've done is we take our original DSD file and we convert to all our other formats that we sell. So we convert down to 48K for, and it's an MP3. So that's what you're listening to, just to sample. And we take our previews off of YouTube. I think they sound pretty good for YouTube videos. But a lot of people want to know, well, I want to hear the difference. Can I stream it in DSD? Well, okay, broadband's always been a problem. Well, guess what? A company in Japan has figured it out, called the Internet Initiative Japan, where some former Sony employees and some people from Cork have gotten together, and IIJ for short, and they came up with software that they call PrimeSeat, or it's an application. You can actually go to their website, and I'll make it available. I think it's a little difficult to find, but I'll post it at bluecoastrecords.com on Monday, so you can go there. And they've got a number of titles available. Most of them are in Japanese because it's a Japanese company. But, you know, I said, hey, how about we do a live recording? And they said, sure. So last January, we set up a concert in a wonderful venue out in California to live stream in double DSD. And the one problem was, in the United States, we have very slow upload speeds. So you need a minimum requirement, which, as I remember, is 20 megahertz. But unfortunately, the clubs, most of them only have 10, and it was going to cost $18,000 just to install it. So we said, okay, look, we'll do the recording. We couldn't figure it out, and then we uploaded it later. So it is available as is, as it recorded, with all the talking and, you know, live recording things that come up. We recorded it live to 2-track. We gave them a copy. It's available on demand. A few months later, we brought Jenna Mamina and Alex DeGrassi in to do a live recording at Skywalker, which did have available upload speed. They can get up to 50 megahertz. So actually, we were able to do live streaming DSD. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. Subsequently, we're talking to them about DSD radio, internet radio, where you can stream live and on demand. In our case, it's probably going to be some on-demand aspects, but we have some ideas. So soon you'll be able to actually stream DSD, and we're really excited about that. And we were doing this at Newport, so you know, using the hotel internet, and we're able to still stream DSD. If you've ever been in a hotel trying to do audio, it's sometimes a nightmare. So this, we were prepared for going to a slower speed. And oh, by the way, depending on your device, it figures out what your highest sampling rate on your sound card is, and we'll just default to that. So if you happen to have a device that doesn't have double DSD or single DSD, it'll just go to whatever it finds. Anyway, so I'm excited about that. Mark, you have anything else you want to say about DSD?
Oh, sure, plenty. I guess as far as we see it, you know, if this panel is to talk about the future of DSD, to me, unless there's some relatively significant changes, the future looks like more of the same, which is problematic in that, you know, as it stands today, there's 2 available DSD files. Generally speaking, you have content from independent labels that does not have the big marketing muscle, or you have titles that have already been available physically on SACD. And so as ripping software gets better and better, it's less and less incentive for a consumer to buy that title again. That people that may be DSD enthusiasts or come from an SACD background, but the bottom line is DSD is lacking street date content, and the big reason for that, or there are a couple of reasons, but the big reason for that are there's not enough artists recording to analog tape or to DSD, and so what you have is kind of a void of current content. You know, you could convert to DSD, but the consumer doesn't want that. They prefer to buy just the source file or codec. So I look at that as a problem on the production side, and we need more evangelizing on the production side, more tools available, and more push for more of what Cookie's doing, and ideally including some larger saleable artists.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the tools are severely lacking for producing DSD music. It's very difficult to make records with tape these days. And I feel strongly if we could come up with tools and put them in the hands of, you know, average everyday musicians, something like this is a start, but you know, you've got to be able to do the kinds of stuff you do on Pro Tools, and it's got to be accessible to, you know, emerging artists who want to produce high-quality music. And in my experience, every artist who's worked with it, they're stuck with it. They just want to keep working with it. They love it.
Yeah, oh, yes.
So, I'm not an expert on it, but I think I have read that one of the problems with DSD was that there were no digital editing tools.
Well, yes, we can edit, we can signal process, but there's not very many of them out there, and they're expensive. They're hard to come by. The converters are expensive, but it's totally possible to do.
And it's not a simple subject, and I know everybody would like it to be simple, but from a production standpoint, you've got recording, you've got mixing, you've got mastering, you've got 3 stages after that before it gets to you, the music lover who's buying it. And every one of them, damage can occur. So, the truth is you can make a bad DSD recording too if you don't start with a good recording to begin with.
Sure.
Right.
So you always have that in mind. But in terms of, let's take into consideration that you've got qualified engineers and they're just looking to do what they're used to doing, like Gus said, in Pro Tools. Maybe they're not as strict as we are at Blue Coast about no headphones and live performances, which brings its own challenges, but they actually want to record more isolated sounds, like they want the drums in one room, they want to overdub a bass, they want to be able to overdub some background vocals. Then you need multi-track recording ability, and it becomes very difficult and slow, especially if you're used to doing little fixes. And sadly, we've been having this discussion is the only system available that can do quad or double DSD right now is the Pyramids. And whenever you want to go into editing, or you even want to change the volume, unlike the Sonoma, we use both systems now. We love Gus. We wish the Sonoma had the ability to go up, and we're hoping one day it does, because editing on the
Me
Sonoma,
too.
yeah, was a dream come true. I mean, just so many things about it. It started as a DSD recording device and software, and so if you approach it that way, it just makes it easier to work in DSD. The Pyramids present certain challenges when you want to do a lot of editing or any gain changes. You've got to go into a DXD mode, and that's PCM. It's a very high rate DXD mode, but I'm so used to hearing DSD that when I have to go into that mode, it makes me a little crazy. And
Rendering doesn't work so well when you're working with audio.
Yeah,
It works for
and
picture, but not so well for audio.
And that's what I read, was that you often have to convert to PCM
right.
to do the editing. And then
No,
back-
you don't.
Oh, you do?
Not for editing. For straight editing, you can pretty much stay in DSD, right? You can do
Well,
that.
no,
No.
actually during the unlike the Sonoma,
Uh-huh.
during little section, if you wanted to make a gain change or you wanted to
Oh.
crossfade, for that very small millisecond, you're going to be in DXD. And we've had to say to ourselves, okay, where do we draw the line? So we need to fade in and we need to fade out. So we've said that's okay. We've said it's okay if we have to edit 2 pieces together. We want to cut out a section. We're only talking about like milliseconds where it goes into DXD. Now, if we want to bring down a whole section, like a whole chorus, because maybe it was a little loud, and we want to highlight that section, bring it down 3 dB, then it goes to DXD, and that section remains in DXD. So what Naris and the Digital Entertainment Group have decided is that if something is 51% or more DSD, the labels and the producers are able to call it DSD. And they came up with this as a compromise because it's very difficult to explain what goes on in multi-track recording and mixing. We're working on standards now so that we can give you more identifiers that will allow for knowing what the source material is, whether it's been transferred, and even in the mix stage. And in conversations I had earlier this week about it, bringing up things like, for instance, at Blue Coast, it's tape, it's DSD from start to end. That's just what we do. As a hired engineer, I'll get 99% of the music out there is being recorded on PCM. Most of it in 44.1, a lot of it in 48, and a percentage, maybe 10% in 96.24. So I'm going to get a 96.24 multi-track, maybe 24 tracks in 96.24. And what I've discovered is that if I mix through my analog console, in other words, not in the computer, but use analog EQs, analog effects, maybe I'm making more of a pop record or a bigger sounding record. If I come through my console and mix it out to DSD, a quad or double or single DSD format, if we compare that to a 96.24 mix file, we find we like the DSD better. It almost becomes a double whammy. You start with 96.24, go through the console, and then end up at 96.24, and it's like, oh man, it's like PCM twice over. And so at least if you only have one source of PCM and you go through the console and you come out to DSD, we believe, to our ears, it sounds better still in the DSD format. And what we do with our distribution platform, which is Downloads Now, is at the top of every microstore, you'll have the provenance listed, exactly how we received the file and what we did to it afterwards, whether we mixed it out or whether we converted it. And as we saw, about 50% of you will buy a DSD file. So we'll say something like, all right, for your convenience, we'll convert it to DSD. But we believe in this case, the 96.24 WAV file sounds the best because that's how we received it. It was the first generation. So are you all confused at this point? Yes.
So when you upsample from 96 to 24, what is going on in the process to actually, to your ears, make it sound better? Because you're working with a set amount of information. Are you adding more to it? How are you enhancing it?
There's a difference. There's a difference. Upsampling, I consider just a conversion.
Okay.
And I don't always hear a benefit. So we first have to learn the language. So what you're talking about is us receiving a mastered 96.24 file, upsampling it to DSD, and that wouldn't necessarily to our ears sound better on DSD. Okay. We, in that case, would recommend the 96.24 WAV file because it was first generation. And the other reality is anything that comes afterwards is going to be a second generation copy. You're going to have decay or degradation regardless. Now, if we get a multi-track, meaning we're going to make decisions on mixing by adding reverb, adding EQ, adding other things, that's a mix. You will hear the difference. Yeah, that's a good question. Yes?
I'm not sure that other listeners feel the same way that I do, but what I like about DSD, and I was one of the people that had to get pushed into it, but what I like about the DSD that you produce is that I know it hasn't been mucked with very much because you can't muck with it without running it.
Yeah.
You try to mix two channels of DSD together by simply adding them, and you're going to increase the noise floor 3 dB if I understand that correctly. And so what I think happens in your studio is when you're recording, you do the very best job you can of capturing it as accurately as you can, and then do very little to it to mess it up. And so when I have heard Venice Rising, which I downloaded from your site, listened to it through my system, and it sounded very, very similar to what I heard here. And that's what thrills me about buying pure DSD.
Well, thanks.
That's the part, because I feel like the engineers have to be very careful when they record it to get it right, because you can't fix it later very easily.
Yeah, it's a matter of opinion. I enjoy that style of recording, which is why I do it. What you'll hear is with Meghan and Marco's actual album, which is going to stretch beyond Blue Coast Records. It's their own label. And we did take those original tracks and put them on tape, and then did a lot of overdubs. So you'll hear more of how I would produce a multi-track recording. So I'm going to be mucking with it, and you'll hear the changes in the sound. It's not going to be quite as pure. The reality is, you talk to Beyonce's engineer, who's he's a great engineer, but he has to deal with tracks he's getting from all over the world, and to convince other engineers that this is how they need to record is nearly impossible.
Yeah,
It's just not going to happen.
It's not.
Right. So, any comment, Mark? Oh,
So, Gus, you mentioned tape. In other words, almost like if you can't begin with tape, you can't do DSD.
No, that's another option to produce a respectable DSD end product, is to actually record on tape. A lot of the SACDs out there started on tape, or some of them even were tape multi-track mixed to DSD. So tape, the thing about when you're working with DSD, if you want to keep it with that analog feel, you don't want to go through a digital process if you can help it. And tape is not a digital process, so you can use tape. It's just getting more difficult to use it. But with the Sonoma, when we go out and do multi-track recording sessions, the workflow is, it's a lot like the old days when you used to throw up a 24-track. You do simple editing on the 24-track, except we can do complex editing without any problem. But it's very much like that. You're working with a multi-track, putting everything on it, mixing, mixing back to DSD, which is like mixing back to tape. It's very, very similar to the workflow in the 70s.
But you can, like Cookie did right over here, and John.
Yeah.
You can record direct to DSD.
Sure. And we do it all the time.
Yeah.
Sure. No, you don't have to use tape. I'm just saying in some cases, you use tape a lot.
yeah, I went back to tape. I threw away Pro Tools 15 years ago. I went back to tape. I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, and regarding catalog material, any of the classics, the stuff that we've reissued on analog productions and then generated DSD files from the SACD cutting masters, those all originated on tape. Those were analog recordings that we got the original analog masters and remastered,
And now you're putting out tapes.
And now we're putting out tapes as well. That's right.
So, Mark, just a question for you. Like, some of the older living stereo outlets, why can't we get more of those on DSD?
They're coming, actually. So quite a number of them are up right now. Or we've reissued 25 of them that we cherry picked from that catalog. And we did do all of those as SACD, which means that they are coming to super high res as DSD downloads. So I think right now we've got 6 of them live as DSD downloads, and the remainder will in fact be there. And actually that's something just offline that I'm talking to Sony Masterworks, that'll be actually coming very, very soon, maybe within the next week or 2.
How about Van Cliburn's Tchaikovsky 1?
You're
Right,
tough one.
couldn't tell you exactly when that's coming, but
Do you think it will be coming?
if somebody cares to do it, then yes.
This is actually a really good and an interesting topic. So a few weeks ago, I don't know how many of you get my newsletter, a fellow wrote in and said, why aren't there more high-resolution recordings? So I wrote an answer, and it kind of caused a stir on some of the forums. And, as those things happen. So I'll tell you what's happening, for all of us, is it's very difficult to license the masters. And on top of that, it's very difficult to find the masters, the original masters. So it's, number one, you're waiting around from 6 months to 2 years or however long it takes, depending on the contracts involved and who owns it and the family trusts, and people die and who's got to get their approvals. it's forever. I mean, I commend them for even trying to do that.
It is a tough process. Some good news to share, people may have noticed. So now Warner Brothers, we have some Warner Brother DSD content, so that means that now we have DSD content from all of the major labels. Again, limited at this point, for the most part, to titles that have already been on SACD. That is something of a roadblock, but we do have content from all of the major labels, which I think is great. Also, just recently, the Jimi Hendrix estate has shown interest and is jumping into high res. Not yet as downloads, but a couple of SACD titles that will eventually end up as downloads, I'm sure, and then more to come from that classic catalog.
So this may be a bit simplistic, but for someone like me, can you go over a little bit the difference between the super high-res DSD download versus an SACD versus a non-SACD DSD?
Sure, and I'll defer mostly to Gus, since Gus is actually the one that any authors are SACDs and then generates the DSD files for us. Basically, the short answer to your question is they're the same. So we generate those DSD files from the SACD cutting master, right, Gus?
Yeah, everything you said is probably exactly the same as far as what's in the file.
Okay, but as far as listening to the different formats, an SACD versus a DSD CD versus the super high-res download, they're all going to sound different, and the quality is going to be different, of course, yes.
If they're all DSD, they should sound the same.
Well, you know, the problem is the DAC.
Right.
You have to look at the DAC and.
Or what you play it on,
Yeah,
sure. Right.
because, exactly, and for a long time, even when we first started delivering DSD, all the SACD players were still going through a process that outputted PCM.
Yeah.
Now there's some SACD players doing DSD, but I think most of you in this room can testify that no two DACs sound the same. I know, I can't even tell.
But if you were to take those various DSD files
Right.
and put them in, say, an OPPO player, the OPPO will play the SACD, it'll play the files. On the OPPO player, they should be the same.
Okay, so for instance, now, excuse me if I'm, again, uninformed here, but like DMP used to do a DSD CD, and then they would have the DSD SACD.
Okay. So the DSD CD is probably just a Redbook CD. It's a normal CD, but the source was DSD.
Okay.
Is that what you're referring to?
Kind of, yes.
Yeah. It just means that the recording was done in DSD. You're going to get more from it because when you come down to Redbook 44.1 from a DSD stream, it sounds pretty superior. The whole A to D process works just better than just working with most PCM converters and going to 44.1.
Brian might have a question.
Yes.
I was just going to say, one of the interesting trends, I've done some work with the native DSD folks who recently passed 1,000 DSD downloads on their site, and 800 of those are actually multi-channel. But the other interesting trend that I think people don't yet realize is that, Mark was referring to some of the independent labels putting out, SACDs and DSD. In the last year, some of the independent labels, to save money, are now going back to stereo CDs, but they are posting their DSD files on the download sites, like Super High Res, like Native. And one of the interesting things on Native, if you want to look at it, is if you go to their search engine and you click on the button that says DSD exclusively, never on SACD, there are now over 200 albums that were recorded in DSD but never released on SACD, including albums from Harmonia Monday and Yarlung and Channel Classics, and that actually is a growing trend. Unfortunately, part of it has to do with cost reduction, and part of it has to do with the notion of, to try to continue to be able to record live recordings, whether it's classical, jazz, or acoustic, to make the numbers work. That's happening. So in some respects, that's another area to take a look at, because I know some people say, oh yeah, all the DSD downloads were on SACD, and that used to be almost true. But with the work that Cookie has done, and now the work at Native, that's no longer true. Roughly 25%
Yes, and
of
moving
the
in that
cases.
direction, I think there's only one plant that we can go to for SACDs here. It's in Austria, or actually two, one in Germany, one in Austria. but it's still difficult and it's fairly expensive. It's a lot less expensive than it used to be, but it's still costly.
Yeah, and I think out of the 50 or 60 or so Blue Coast titles, maybe 4 we put on SACD. The demand for DSD was so high that it was easier for us just to continue generating content than it was to consider all the work, including the artwork is really expensive and time consuming to generate. So if we've got the music, we take a picture, you've seen it, you get an idea of what it, guerrilla recording it, and we just put it up. But then we're at least generating the music. And then what we try to do after a while is put together some interesting compilations. If a recording's doing well, like Fiona Joy's latest, DSD is doing very well. It's our bestseller this year, so we've made the decision to release it in SACD. I'm going to give Gus the masters today.
Yeah. But Mark, you probably have the best data. You're selling SACDs, you're selling files. What's the demand like between the two?
Well, it's definitely starting to shift. I mean, so I think that we sell more SACDs than anybody, and we still are putting out our physical reissues on SACD. But more and more of our longtime regular repeat customers are transitioning to instead ingest that same content and much more on download. Yeah.
So, Gus, I think you used the term archiving.
Yeah, Cookie did.
Oh, Cookie, okay. So, I mean, I've heard the rumor, I mean, is it true that a lot of your big names are archiving all of their old master tapes to DSD?
Well, they knew where their tapes were,
Yeah.
honestly. They can't even, I don't want to tell you how many labels I've talked to.
Some of them archived their PCM or their analog tapes to PCM and then threw away the tapes.
Right,
Yeah.
that's a big issue. So there was a lot of archiving that did happen to date using PCM, and so then to try to get these labels to go back and pull the tapes again has been an issue. And frankly speaking, for as great as the support for DSD has been, the revenue generated has not been enough to influence change in a large scale way. So it's a lot of begging and pleading, really, when it comes down to it. So.
And there's been a trend with the recording engineers that I know, when those of us that have studios, we don't give our tapes back anymore. We keep them. So that's why when you see in the background all the tapes, I have 30 years, 35 years of tapes that from Island, from, you name it. And I'm not going to, well, Island's already.
Right, where there's still ground to be gained and a war to be won would be going forward, right, Gus? So all this that may have been done to date, it's frustrating that there was a 24-bit file created but not a DSD. But going forward, when they pull these tapes, there's no reason why they shouldn't be creating a DSD master at
Absolutely.
the same time.
And they're still not doing it just to save a little bit of money. They're pulling the tapes, they're doing surround stereo of, great classic titles, but if the order's not in there to make a DSD copy, they're not doing it. I think the label should be archiving everything analog to DSD. Library of Congress has a Sonoma. I don't know what they're doing with it, but they've got one.
So now I guess we are coming to the question. I totally agree with Gus. Yeah, everything analog should be archived as DSD. But is that good enough to be released as is? Because we know that the problem with DSD is if we want to do any modifications, level adjustments and stuff. I think the problem here is if I have perfectly recorded and mastered analog recording from 70s,
Yeah.
I would like to hear it as close as the analog tape.
Yeah.
Just give it in DSD. You don't have to do any level adjustments, nothing. But
That's correct.
what I'm seeing, companies are not doing that.
Yeah. Sorry, way back.
2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes.
So why we cannot just transfer this analog master with, let's say it doesn't have any anomalies.
We do that all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do it all the time, yeah.
yeah, we do.
That
we do
would be
also.
pure DSD like sourced from analog
But
master.
what you
which,
just said before
which
that, where we
never-
can't do anything with
which
DSD?
never went to DXD or PCM,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
you
right.
don't
No,
have to.
they do that all the time.
We do,
Right.
yeah.
Acoustic sounds is it's their main thing, is to get that analog tape to DSD for
Or
releases.
if originally was recording it in DSD,
Right.
through the sound.
But what you just said, you can do stuff with DSD, but it's in a way just like an analog tape. Like you would take an analog tape, go through, EQ it, record it back. You can work with that same workflow with DSD.
Speaking about Sonoma, how I adjust the levels? Is that in
You
analog
can do
domain?
it. You can do it in the Sonoma, and that converts it to 8 bits at the DSD sample rate, and you raise it or lower it. It still sounds and feels just like DSD. So I think it's more about the sample rate than the DSD. Or you go out analog, do some analog EQ, bring it back in. It's no different working with DSD multitrack or stereo than it is with tape, if you want to work that way.
We use our DSD recorders like tape, and we come out analog. So we do our volume changes in an analog state. We do EQ in an analog state. Not everybody wants to work that way because it requires a large, expensive console and upkeep. And also we keep all the outboard gear. So I think it's more of an education for the pro audio engineers. And one thing you can do as music lovers is support the format by buying it, showing the labels that yes, people want this, and then eventually the recording engineers, professional audio engineers are going to say, hey, I need to learn this to keep up. If they see that there's a reason to stay in the DSD game, they will. So I think we've got to cut it off, but I want to thank you all for coming.
I have one last request though.
Oh, okay.
If there's any industry folks out there who can take this picture and this DSD and put them together in like one container, we could really use that.
Yeah.